it's like stopped, so I'm not sure. But I see that we're now on the live on YouTube, so. Hey. Yay, Joe, thank you.
You're welcome. Interestingly, I can't comment on streams, like no streams, the Node.js one, the OpenJS one. I've tweeted at Google and YouTube, and they can't do anything.
Have you behaved badly and been put in the quiet box?
You know what?
Quiet box. But
I just tried it and it worked. So my penalty time is over, I guess.
Well, cool.
Anyway.
Good job, Joe.
Was that 20%, Joe?
Yeah, eventually.
All right, so welcome to our standards working group meeting. We did not have a meeting 2 weeks ago because we were in conflict with the working meeting of the CPC. And also we've been gathering a lot of data from our projects, and that extra 2 weeks gave us more time to talk with more people. So we'll be reporting on that today. But before we get started, let me ask if we have any announcements to share. Any upcoming TC39 meetings, for example, during the first week of March?
There will in fact be one. Impressions of you.
I don't remember the exact dates though. Is there anything people should be going to? I guess you could pop the link to the agenda in the.
Yeah, I'll put the agenda link in there, but either March 9th and 10th, we're doing this sort of weird alternative meeting schedule starting this year. So there's more meetings, but some of them are shorter. So 2 days instead of 4. As far as, I mean, the agenda tends to, like the agenda deadline is in 5 days. And so things tend to cram up last minute on it. So it's probably best to take another look at it 6 days from now. There's like a few needs consensus PRs and stuff, but the main stuff that's interesting, one of them is an alias. Someone, Matthias wants to add promise.anysettled as an alias for promise.race. So there's gonna be some discussion about that. And then some of the bigger things is there's an update about top level await and its progress to stage 4. And then a really big one is temporal. It's up there for stage 3. It's got a 45-minute time box, which seems very ambitious, but it's a very large proposal. So if you have thoughts, feel free to review. And then there's also a resizable array buffer for stage 3, but that I expect that unless you're doing arcane things with typed arrays and array buffers, you won't pay attention to that. And there's currently a thing up for stage 2 and for stage 1. And there's a longer discussion about the pipeline operator and things like that. So
great.
I don't know if anyone has opinions.
Well, thank you so much, Jordan. I hope it is a productive and enjoyable 2 days of TC39 meetings, which is a weird thing to say, 2 days. Cool. Let's see. Similarly, the W3C has, I don't think they've announced the dates for like their spring AC meetings, but the CEO, Jeff Jaffe, has been doing these interesting community like office hours calls. And so if you were interested in meeting up with folks, different members, and also the management team at the W3C, they're doing these cool office hours, and let us know. We can let you know when the next one is happening. Let's see. Go ahead, Brian.
There will be a web components face-to-face sometime in April as well, if anybody's interested in that.
Is that a real face-to-face or like a?
No.
Okay.
Those are fictional. Yeah.
A face not to face, but actually socially distanced and mediated through a screen face.
Yes, screen to screen.
Okay, cool. Cool. Web components, W3C, JavaScript. On that kind of line, the foundation is doing a AMA panel for like JavaScript trends. We've invited a couple of different folks from the community to follow up on this thing we've been doing the last couple of years, where we get folks talking about sort of like future trends. and sort of things they're imagining for 2021. It's always an interesting conversation. So welcome your attendance or your questions or your participation on that panel here in a week. I think it's a week from tomorrow or Friday. I don't remember. It's next week and it's on the public calendar. So I'll refresh that. And then I would put out a last call for the OpenJS World CFPs, but that was actually yesterday. Womp womp. So I hope everyone got their talks in on time, even at like 12:01, which is maybe what we did last night, Joe, to get your conference and talk proposals in. But there's still time to participate if you're interested in helping select talks. So if you want to get involved with the programming, please raise your hand. We'd love to have you help us evaluate those proposals. Anything else big ticket? I guess Friday is a board meeting, and we usually do have a public version of the board meeting that's on the public calendar as well. Am I missing anything, Robin, that's sort of like super timely?
I think you got it.
Okay, cool. All right. Cool. There's always something is the, TLDR. It's always something. All right. I think we have just a few items on the agenda, but they will likely merit lots of interesting discussion today. Maybe we can start with the shorter item that Brian reminded me to add to our chat, which is changing the W3C AC representative. And that person has been Brian Cardell for us for some time, Brian, yeah? And
yeah, 2 years, I think.
Yeah, thank you for your service. But Brian is also the AC rep for Igalia, his new company, and is interested in spreading the love, so to speak. So there's been a couple of folks that have been sort of watching AC chatter and watching different things coming out of the W3C, like Mike Champion, who's joined us, and then myself, and I think a handful of others. So we'd like to pass the role on. Brian, do you want to sort of summarize our chatter about it?
Well, being an AC rep for a lot of companies is mostly like ceremonial. There's very few that are like actively engaged, and it just so happens that OpenJS has a bunch of people who are engaged. And when you attend meetings, you represent. If you vote, you represent. You have access to a bunch of other sort of forums because you're the AC rep. And so we reached out to W3C about whether like we could have sort of a joint AC rep group where we could make sure that the small group of very engaged people are getting, the news and updates and able to discuss collaboratively, and that it should probably be somebody else. So they advised us that we can like create and sign up a mailing list, but it seems that would have to be like a person of somebody that officially spoke for the mailing list. So we suggested that should probably be Jory, and we have a couple of things to work out there. But does that summarize it well? So the idea is basically this, small group of people would get all of the AC updates and could help sort of spread the discussion and the work out a little bit. But that in terms of having a representative, it would be Jory. Jory, did I summarize that okay, or?
Yeah. So just the TLDR is we thought we could maybe do a team thing and just spread that info out amongst the group. But when it comes to being able to, they want to be able to identify a single person who can post on behalf of the org. That just sort of is the way their model is set up, and so that has to be a name, that has to, and the person has to be able to email from the list, which our list doesn't allow us to do. So I, for example, can't email from standards@openjsf.org. So we chatted about it with Brian being the Igalia representative, Mike Champion being a sort of an emeritus member of the AC, which they grant to advisory board members who've served long and honorably. Mike and we drew straws, and I got the shorter, long one, depending on which way you want to look at it.
Well, I think the key thing there is, like I said, you gain access to other forums as well. So if there's an AC meeting, like Mike can already attend an AC meeting, and I can already attend an AC meeting. And like historically, Jory has been AC for like Boku in the past, but currently she can't attend an AC meeting, I think. So that sort of works out well for everybody, that everybody can have full participation.
The other thing we could do is have like a nomination period, where we say we're looking for nominees to serve as the OpenJS Foundation's rep, which we could absolutely do that as well. But just interested in how this group thinks we ought to proceed with this particular appointment, because it's one that, for just historical purposes, hasn't been super formally handled. When the JS Foundation had a rep, it was more of like I think it really literally was who drew the shortest straw, because there's a lot of email. Thoughts?
I think it's an important role. I'm glad that it still will be a team effort. We're also paid up with our dues. I think that's what we noticed as well when Mike Champion joined, is that we had not paid our dues when it transferred from JS to OpenJS. So we're all up to date. And I think when I look at, like with Unicode, and I can't remember what else, didn't you all self-nominate? Or when Miles self-nominated for OSI, I think is how that maybe worked.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right. Yeah. And then Emily, we kind of did that too for Unicode as well, but it was sort of like of course it's Emily.
Of course.
For Unicode, I mean, to be clear, we're not paying anything because we are it's an
affiliation.
Affiliate member, yes.
Yeah. Same with OSI.
Yeah. And I'm not a generic rep for all of Unicode. I'm specifically only for the message forward working group. Drat, name blocking on me is the one we ended up picking for our generic Unicode rep. Let me dig it up from somewhere in Slack. Don't wait on me.
Okay.
I think it's fine that we do nominations and vote. It seems fine.
So we could just, we could do open a nomination, and then keep that open for a week, because it's a fairly small group of people, but that would give us enough time to inform the CPC, and then do assuming that if there's no other nominees beyond myself, then no need for a vote. But if there are, then do a vote among our group here. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Super.
Ben Michael, I think, for you.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, yes, yes, yes. And he was working on a really epic blog post. Thank you, Emily. That is a great reminder to go check on that, because I read the draft. It was really good. Thank you. Let me record this action really quick. Action, open nominations. Okay. And then also action, follow up with Ben about blog posts. That's funny. Awesome. All right, moving to our next agenda item, which is listed as the 2021, strategic planning and goal setting issue. What we have today is an update on some of the conversations that Robin and myself, and also Michael Dawson, have been having with different projects around getting their input and their preferences for those 6 possibilities. And Robin and I made a deck. Mostly Robin made the deck. It's because it's pretty. And let me just open it up so that we have this easier to talk about. But as I get that up, we shared this deck with and kind of talked through sort of the setup. Can I find the deck? There we go. The setup of, like, just context and that kind of thing. And then got them to sort of give us questions and feedback on which of the approaches they liked the best. So let me share my screen with, there's my keynote, share. So y'all should see my, this keynote thing. See, pretty deck that Robin made. And we walked folks through, like, who we are, setting up a little bit of, like, what is the work and that sort of thing. And then we jumped right into those 6 ideas that we summarized in our notes and also in that HackMD brainstorming doc. So just to recap everyone, because y'all have probably not been thinking about this as much in the last couple of weeks. With the 6 ideas were focused on, number 1, like filling the cracks, creating more of a space for standardization activities to arise by filling gaps between different specs and work streams that are happening elsewhere. So this is where, like, for example, Brian's other issue on our repo around the polyfills would arise. Idea number 2, becoming a really strong and safe forum for discussing proposal needs. So leaning into the just feedback process and helping shape and get some community pre-consensus and that sort of stuff. Idea number 3 was really keying off of some comments that Jordan had made around just sort of doing audit and discovery and research, finding those common things that we're all doing, we're all relying on, and finding opportunities for improvement in those spaces. Idea number 4 was focusing on the projects themselves specifically, where a project may identify that it has some standardization activities goals, and creating process and mentorship and support, perhaps through the Joint Development Foundation, which we heard from a few weeks ago, so that they can move those things forward, and then we help them celebrate and surface those wins. And then number 5 was that we create a forum to help people on board and learn about standardization activities, perhaps curating great content, much of which already exists on the web, and we've got lots of great examples, but none of it is super well surfaced in one spot. We could do that. We could really help perhaps create more diverse and inclusive environments and working groups, because we're doing that mentorship and support there. And then last but not least, the No Jerks plan, which is where we would perhaps invest our time and energy in not just, supporting people who want to work on standards, but also to help them with their DEI activities internally. So office hours and, feedback and training and that kind of stuff. So those were our 6 things. And obviously in sharing those with the projects, we went into further depth and we took questions along the way. But I hope that quick characterization accurately reflects y'all's memory as well about what we did and why. Cool. All right, so that's what we shared. And then we got some feedback about what was good, what people liked. Let me go pull that up real quick. And I'll share with y'all. So we still have more people to talk to, is the other thing I want to say. There we go. We've talked to Dojo, AMP, Webpack. We've talked to a couple of different groups in AMP. We're planning to talk to Node. Probably that will end up happening in chunks because not everybody can meet at a single time. We still need to get input from jQuery, which we will probably do this coming or next Friday. And who else am I missing? WebDriver and Web Hint were also ones that we wanted to talk to this go round.
So Electron.
Oh, Electron, that's right. And I'm missing their tallies. So I need to go get those. Thank you. Yes. So basically this was like here's the thing, and here's the options, and here what do you think? And by the end of it, most folks gave some kind of my gut take is that I like option 1 and 5, for example. And so we've just sort of recorded that. And as you can see, there's a lot of sympathy for options 5 and 6, sort of around that, kind community, helpful, inclusive community work, but also a lot of folks liking option number 2, which is the discussion and the input on proposals and the community pre-consensus. So it's still early to say that we have a clear preference, but this is sort of where it's trending so far based on who we've talked to. We're also getting some interesting notes, and I don't know, Robin, if you want to speak to some of the comments that we've gotten so far from folks.
Yeah, I think it's interesting on number 2. I'm hearing a pattern, it actually is sort of happening on some level, but it's only happening because somebody knows somebody who knows somebody. So it's kind of like who you know. It's not, and it's always last minute. So being more programmatic about it and transparent, I think will help. We had one comment I thought was interesting saying, hey, is this standards group, are you working on just momentum, or do you really want to spin something up and get something going? I think, Jory, you and I talked after, and probably both, perhaps.
Yeah.
So those were sort of my big takeaways from a consistency across our conversations. But yeah, I think definitely to the on number 5, I think a lot of demand. They may have people in their community. It may not be the people we spoke to, but just sort of getting that pipeline and succession planning of the projects for people who are interested, I think is important.
One of the comments also that we got was that number 6 really felt like something we should be doing as sort of like a sub routine, you know, that in getting involved in these groups, that 6 was something that we could do just by virtue of the fact that, you know, we are awesome people, you know, we try and behave and model the behavior that we want to see in these communities, which I'm sympathetic to, but also, you know, I think it's the difference between saying we're showing up and we're going to, you know, model great behavior versus we're showing up and we're going to get involved perhaps in a W3C DEI effort, for example. Those are sort of different things.
That's also reflected by the split between the first and second choice placings for number 2 and number 5 compared to number.
Right. Yeah. Number 2 is, you know, in creating healthy spaces for productive community discussion, you know, that sort of like modeling of the behavior we want, the standards behavior we want to see in the world is there. Hopefully that's the goal anyway. That's the plan. Yeah. So it's some of the early pieces. The other group that we shared this with actually was some of the community. Michael Champion and Brian also, we all joined one of those W3C office hours that I mentioned in the announcements section, and previewed this and just let them know what we're doing. And a lot of people at the W3C are really interested in number 1 and seeing how we can help with number 1. They're also interested in kind of a sub idea of number 5 that Brian and I kind of talked about around like helping people onboard more effectively and more in a more supported way to the W3C. So, you know, it's a big organization. There's a lot to sort of grok and learn in terms of process and that kind of stuff. So if there was some way to pair a new W3C participant with a buddy, and maybe those are OpenJS buddies, for example, you know, we can help people like on board a little bit. And so that was another like thing that the standards group thought, well, that would be really helpful. So that's cool. It's cool to see that they would that they like us.
Yeah, we got some kind words.
So
I think that's actually really important because, like I said, early on, for a lot of companies, the AC role rep and even participation is like a lot of it is ceremonial. Like if you look at the AC or if you look at W3C participation, most organizations have 1 person to 1 working group. And they're not necessarily active, they're just following. And maybe for some of them, that's what they want. But in a lot of my discussions, like people just kind of don't know how to participate and how to engage well and wind up sort of checking out. So, you know, or end up sort of, you know, doing things that are not conducive to making them a productive member of participation and everything. So yeah, I think that would be a really big deal. Like I feel like everybody could use a sort of buddy system, help them find their way and participate well.
I'm curious if, as insofar as like this is tracking with some of the projects that we're getting feedback from, has anyone here sort of, and also kind of rehearing the 6 possibilities again after a few weeks, has your thinking on any of these changed? Or are there ones that, should we do a quick assessment of things that we're perhaps more or less excited about just in our group, so that we can kind of think about which direction we might want to go with different things?
I think it's a good question. Again, there was a lot of interest from the W3C in that AC thread to work with us. And I'm like, oh, that's great. What are we working on? There's so much great stuff. So it would be good to start thinking about where we want to, or where we'd like to focus.
Well, I'd almost put more value on the input we get from the community at large than what we determine. It's kind of like being your own therapist. It's better to get the input from someone else.
Mm-hmm.
I did find the feedback from the W3C list super helpful, because it's like just connecting. I mean, part of why we're here is, right, to like make the threads between our orgs like stronger and more productive, right? And to hear them say, oh gosh, yeah, this would be really helpful if y'all could help, that's phenomenal in my opinion. But it's also got to work for our project communities too. So Dom from the W3C is proposing a chat next week. I'll share details in the standards Slack channel for anybody who might be able to make it, but this would just sort of be a continuation of the brainstorm chatter, just kind of get to know convo that we started at the AC office hours. If y'all would be interested and available to attend and sort of bring perspective from the OpenJS Foundation, we'd love to have lots of folks thinking about it. To Robin's point, I think finding something really atomic that we could help with and just iterate and practice with would be really good, especially if it fits within one of our buckets, like bucket 5 or bucket 6 or something, or 2. Any of the buckets. I like them all. So like this is a bad idea for me to vote, because I would vote for all of them.
And there's only one of you that we can hire.
Well, it's like that would be eating the whole elephant, as my pal Brian likes to say. Mm-hmm. So and that gives you indigestion, and that's bad. So so we'll continue this conversation with the projects. Hopefully by our next meeting we will have gathered all of the input from those who are at least interested in providing it. Some projects are not as interested in this work just yet, and that's totally fine. So to that end, I suppose also, if you happen to be, the folks on this call, if you happen to be talking with folks from other OpenJS project communities, feel free to give, and please do, give them the elevator pitch here and gather their thoughts, because it's just good to have more of that feedback, as Donovan pointed out. And I think with that, we can kind of make more of a set of concrete decisions about what some of those atomic things might be, and write some proposals for projects we can move forward on that fit. All right. Other combo or question or ideas also? Kibitzing? Nope. Cool. All right. I'll stop my share and then I'll share this spreadsheet with everybody too. I just made it the other day. Oh, can someone upgrade Mike Champion? I just clicked off the screen share and saw he was cool. I don't, let's see. Hey, Mike, I'm not sure when you joined, did you have anything else you wanted to add about the W3C and chat?
Oh, hi, Jory. No, I think the call Dom is organizing next week is more W3C centric. They're trying to figure out how to deal with the reality that a lot of the standards work, the standards are basically ratifying work that happens in the open source community, but that's mostly in like Chromium especially. There's another call that I think you're working on that I think is more, our 6 points that we want to get engagement from some of these W3C people on. We got a lot of good response from the reach out we did saying, here are our 6, strategic goals or whatever we're calling them. And but figuring out what exactly different people want to talk about is where we are now. Does that make sense?
Yes, and thank you. I did cross wires on the two, and that conversation was so fruitful that it did spark a couple of different threads. And so you're right, I did just cross the meeting topics. So very good. Thank you for that clarification. But yeah, I think the invitation would still perhaps stand for those in our community who would be interested in either conversation.
Yeah, right. But there are 2 conversations. One is more us asking them about the things we talked about earlier in this call. And then there's the other, which is a point that Dominique Hazel, whatever his name is, however you pronounce his name, has picked up, especially because he was the team contact for WebRTC, which took forever to get standardized. And the standard is really just the sort of the byproduct of the open source work, the code. And so he's trying to learn from that and hopefully, because W3C has to basically use an exception handling mechanism to deal with things like WebRTC, and there's something else called the web font that are what really have only one implementation. And I think they're trying to find a middle ground between just having the code get developed and then the standard get written down as the sort of, well, here's the APIs we eventually came up with, versus the thing that really doesn't happen anymore, which is a bunch of people getting together in a room and designing an API and then going off and implementing it in clean rooms and seeing if their implementation's interoperable. But that just doesn't happen anymore. It's too inefficient.
That reminds me of a series that I should surface to this group. If you find that space, kind of the meta space of this kind of process interesting, as Michael Champion, I know you and I do. The Open Forum Europe group is having these ongoing sort of brown bag lunch series that about the intersection of standardization and open source, and they've been getting different representatives from organizations I think the JDF will present, IETF, W3C, Oasis, others, and you can sign up and attend these talks, and there've been 2 so far, and they're very, very, very interesting on this point specifically. I can share that in Slack too. Got lots of things to share with y'all in Slack today.
So just on a related note to a thing that Mike said about things that don't happen anymore, like a lot of the early browsers, Tim Berners-Lee made his HTTP library available like as free software, and a bunch of early browsers use that. So it's not like even from the very beginnings, there wasn't some of that happening.
No, fair point. I mean, I think that this is a little bit of a tangent, but that's like kind of a whole sub theme, which is for some folks, this feels brand new, and then for other folks, like Brian, you're reminded like it's actually quite old. Like people have been doing this for a very long time, and sort of understanding the mechanics of it and like the benefits and when is it the right thing to do and that kind of thing is like super duper interesting, which is another reason why I think going with option number 2, the kind of or number 1, I'm sorry, totally just mixed up our options there. Going with option number 1 would be really interesting for us, because that would be a space where OpenJS is part of that process in a formal way. So cool. Any other thoughts or comments before next agenda item? Nopers, okay, cool. The last agenda item is the issue 106, which is the Home for Reference implementation polyfills. Brian, this is one of yours. We I think had tabled it, but go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like it's part of the larger discussion that we're having, because it had a lot of the same questions even. So we were tabling it while we waited for the survey results, but I think that also these conversations we're having that Mike was just talking about and you were just talking about are also relevant here. So like, if there's something to do, it's a ways off still. I think we need more information and discussions to know, but I think there's potentially something interesting there.
So should we remove the agenda label and perhaps put like
I think, can we put like a future long-term label or something?
Yeah, like I don't even, so I was gonna say, I don't even want to put like a backlog label on it, because it's not a backlog. It's like a pre-planning kind of label that it,
yeah.
You know, like a,
So to possibly alter this discussion a bit, I've got one. I think I maintain the only current polyfill implementation of Intel.plural rules. Should that be one of these that we get considered?
I think it's good food for the discussion that Mike was having, and for our discussions, but I'm not sure how. Like, I don't know what the parameters to a solution there are. Like, if you have a proposal, then I guess we could talk about it. But like, somehow we need to dig into this conversation with the W3C for that, I think.
But I mean, to give content to any of this, if this whole thing starts going somewhere, I do literally have a polyfill implementation that is the only polyfill implementation of Intel.plural rules. And I would be very happy to move its ownership or control under the OpenJS Foundation or whatever if that starts making sense. And it's also something that is actively relevant, given some of the proposals in TC39 that are going to be adding more functionality to, with the number format to v3 proposal going in, and stuff like formatting the plurals of ranges, for instance. That is functionality that is currently not supported by anyone, and that's going to need first a polyfill that this can provide. And so just thought I'd mention it.
I think it would be awesome. To me, it makes perfect sense, particularly like as like the atomic project that we go with if we're going to kind of proceed with the path number one, like, and also the development of some of these continuation of some of these conversations with the W3C. I would love, Emily, for you to, assuming that you're available and all of that, for you to join some of those chats if you're able. Because I like
not gonna promise anything, but can you invite me specifically to things, and then I can see if I can fit that in?
Sure. Yes. Because I know it's already so late, and I'm always so grateful that you stay up and go on nice snowy walks with us. It's like I'm traveling, but I'm not.
Jory, I hope I can be included explicitly on those as well, in case I have time. Yeah. I've expressed some hesitation before on this topic, primarily because like I think that it's totally fine if a polyfill wants to move into the foundation. Great, it's just a project like any other. And I think that if a standards body wants to incorporate into its process a polyfill requirement and prefers to have an official place like our foundation here for that, then great, we should work with them to do that. But absent an official recommendation, like an official partnership with the standards body, it starts to be a tricky, landscape of, competitiveness in the market and implementations, and like saying this is good and this is bad and so on. And that's why TC39 has explicitly tried many times to stay out of that arena.
Mm-hmm. That like goes right to some of the conversations like Brian and I have had over the years, kibitzing on this too. So, sweet. I'm excited. I think we have lots of cool things that we could be kicking tires on. Just like Jordan and Emily, hit me up in Slack just if you want to get more details on calls, but I'll also put data in our standards Slack channel so that you can opt in if you would like. Our next meeting is 2 weeks from today, which is not April 2021. What month am I in? Skipping ahead to the spring already, clearly. Is at March the 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So be there, be square.
I'm showing a conflict with the CPC on that time. If you go to March 9th.
Oh, yeah, I am seeing that now as well on a different calendar. Cool.
We'll fix it.
Yeah, we'll send, we'll square with the folks in Slack so we don't have to take up time. But all right, so tentatively March the 9th, either now or perhaps at an earlier time, same day. Groovy. Any other business? All right, meeting adjourned. Pretend gavel.
Gavel, gavel, gavel.
Gavel, gavel, gavel. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank